is the end of August, the 29th. Sean, nice to see you.
Great seeing you as well.
So, last time we spoke about the African market, we were talking about Airlink and sniffing around the story with Qatar. Turns out that deal came through. Do we still feel the same way? Meaning I feel still that this might not be the smartest move.
I think that, for the many reasons that we outlined in the last in our last chat, I think that this is a positive for both sides. I think, if Qatar's made it clear that their strategy is going to be partnerships, whether it's going to be equity or, alliance type partnerships or whatever else, that's going to be their partnership to expand into secondary markets in Africa. And to be fair, if you're looking at a partner who comes without baggage, so without, say, government ownership or significant debt, or, just the usual baggage that you wind up in terms of airlines that are available to buy into and partner with, Airlink has none of that. Airlink is actually
Right.
a well-run carrier, and if from Qatar's perspective, there is no better partner that they could have chosen for that reason. From Airlink's perspective, I think it comes down to the fact that what does Airlink need to do? And I think Airlink needed to secure its future, acquire, if not necessarily acquire capital, but acquire access to capital to potentially engage in some sort of expansion themselves, whether it's going to be fleet expansion, or it's going to be route expansion, or whatever else. And having, deep pocket partners like Qatar Airways available is a huge positive for them. So I think that, if as long as this was the strategy that both sides wanted, and I believe that it was, they would struggle to have better partners than each other at right now. So it may not be a love marriage, but it's definitely a marriage of a lot of convenience.
Right. That you talk about the fleet thing. Roger Foster needs to, and his team need to think about how they move forward. It's a bit of an overtraded market domestically. He's got the ERJs, which are aging, but are very effective in opening new markets. And then he can roll in the E190s or the E170s and the E190s and then the 195s as those markets grow. But the truth is, for a South African airline, you've got to go north. I mean, there's just nothing else.
There's
You've got to
nowhere
go
else.
north.
I mean,
Right.
twice a week
So
to
now,
Antarctica.
so the interesting thing here would be Qatar has a bunch of Maxes that maybe, as markets develop, maybe some of those Maxes get dry leased or wet leased to Airlink to start doing some serious unpicking. I'm just thinking
I think
aloud
in
here.
concept that makes sense, but I think the challenge with something as new as the Max is going to be utility. And, this is something that is always going to be a challenge in the South African market. If you're bringing in new build aircraft, you just simply don't have enough hours in the day to be able to run them profitably. Now, certainly, if he's going to start using those Maxes overnight into, say, Nairobi or the like, that may be better, but there's a limited market for that. The Golden Triangle, which is pretty much, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban, which is pretty much the only markets which can regularly sustain 180-seater year round, on regular frequencies, you're looking at 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. effectively, and you're not going to squeeze out enough utility out of those aircraft to make the depreciation or the lease rates on a Max work profitably. It's a challenge that Sapphire has had as well. I mean, when you ask Sapphire, are they interested in a Max? Their answer tends to be no. We'd rather look at, slightly older, newer model, older design kind of 800s and the like. So it's a possibility. If Qatar currently has a bunch of those aircraft leased out to Indigo in India to cover for Indigo's own Pratt & Whitney engine problems and shortage of fleet for that. So they've got a bunch of those aircraft in India operating India to Doha routes. Wetly, I'm not quite sure. I think it is a wet lease to Indigo where Indigo, they're operating the flight for Indigo as a wet lease and then co-sharing back on it, or whatever that, but effectively doing that.
But that just serves to underscore that there is precedent, right? Qatar wants to
Definitely.
Qatar has no domestic market. It's all regional. That's the closest. And if they want to utilize airplanes like SAA bringing in Turkish Sun Express airplanes. I think that might be where this goes. That Qatar might find a useful place to move airplanes seasonally, and this might be a useful outlet. It's a low risk experiment, and it just might work. It just might work.
Yeah. But let's keep in mind that Airlink has already done this. Airlink had wet leased 737s already. I think it was Star Air Cargo, which they ran for almost a year last year. So, Airlink has experimented with what the unit costs of having a, 150-seater would be on those. So I'm sure they have the data as to whether that makes sense or not. As I said, I know from a fact, from talking to Airlink and talking to Roger directly about this, Roger's words were pretty much, yes, we know that we are at a cost disadvantage flying a 100-seater against a 180-seater. The catch, of course, is, if you add 180-seaters, what do you do with them when you can't fill them? And I've maintained this throughout. I've said it here. I've said it elsewhere. In an ideal market, Safair needs smaller planes and Airlink needs larger planes. And they're not actually, competing head to head. They both have a unique niche where each of them is better suited, but both have to play in the wider market altogether. So I think I still think Airlink is probably better suited. Their range of fleet sizes give them the ability to access more markets, and there are more markets on the bottom end than there are on the top end. Which can really take on multiple frequency of 150 seaters. But I agree. I think that is something that in the long term Qatar might use either seasonally or in terms of even, Qatar's back in, they took the Maxes back when them and Airbus were sworn enemies. They're back in bed together now. Maybe the Maxes will be surplus to requirements and in the not too long distant future. And when that happens, it's quite conceivable that Airlink might be a landing place for some of them.
Right. It was just an idea that popped into my mind as we were talking about this. One thing, I've just got back from Cape Town, and I enjoyed speaking with a bunch of people there. And one of the items that came up in conversation was absolutely amazing. There is and I'm sure you have a better sense of this than most people, there is a strong Indian population in Natal. And there used to be an Air India flight between Durban and India. And then that went away. And that seems to me to be a really cool market for someone to jump into. Why, I ask? Is that not, SAA is not going to make it happen because they're just not there. Indigo's got this 777-300 now. They're going to get some more big planes down the road. And Air India could be doing this. What do you think is going on there? Is it just not worth it anymore? That the traffic isn't there?
The traffic is there. And, if you look in terms of the largest routes from Africa that are currently unserved, that is actually the second largest. The largest one currently is Harare to London, which doesn't have direct service. And the second largest one is Johannesburg to Mumbai. Last year, there was almost 150,000 passengers. Overall, South Africa to India is well over 200,000 passengers, and that's a lot of passengers for a market without a direct flight. The problem, unfortunately, is that the yields in this market are horrendous. And I've got a little anecdote. I'm flying from Johannesburg to India next month, in a couple of weeks' time, and I paid just about 7,000 Rand round trip to fly from Johannesburg to Mumbai. That is just under just under $400, like $399.43, I think was what I was charged in dollars on my credit card. And that is for a round trip flight, including all taxes and fees and everything else.
You have to bring your own seat?
No, yeah, it's on Ethiopian. So, I get 3 pieces of baggage and, lounge access to Starlines, Gold, and all the bells and whistles. So, and they're not unique in that. They were certainly the lowest fare at 7,000 something. But Etihad was at 8,000. Uganda Airlines was at 9 point something. All of these, Kenya Airways in 8,000s as well. So all of these airlines were in that range of, $395 to $450 to $500 range round trip. And certainly, it's not peak season, whatever else. But if you look at their year-round numbers, the Johannesburg to Mumbai year-round average one-way fare was $240, and that's a yield of 4 cents per kilometer. And to be quite honest, given the fact that South Africa to India is just out of the range of large narrow bodies. So, 321 Neo, even the 321 XLR is not going to be able to do that route nonstop. That means you're going to have to commit a wide body, and there's no way that you can make a wide body's economics work at 4 cents yield. So, this is one of those things where the market is huge, but the problem is because of the geography of the market, you can't really fly it cost effectively nonstop in order to compete with the Emirates, the Qatars, the Etihads, the Ethiopians, the Ugandas, the Rwanders, the Kenyas, the Mauritiuses, the Seychelles, everybody and their dog who's got a hub somewhere along the route can just dump a lot of capacity. And both India and South Africa are markets which are driven by volume. Making those connections work is very easy for these carriers, and it is a cutthroat market as far as fares go. So it's a tricky thing. Definitely the potential is there, but the potential has to be with someone who can come in and serve it at the right price point. And unfortunately, I don't see the ability, if the A321 XLR had the ability to do it, it would have been an ideal route for that. But it's coming up a few hundred nautical miles short. And again, that's Joburg. Joburg is the biggest market. Joburg to Mumbai is 145,000. Cape Town to Mumbai is the second largest, and that is at about 50,000. Durban is way down there at about 11 and 12. And you mentioned KZN as a market, and I think it was interesting because my dad was involved with the setup of Air India's route to South Africa way back in the days in the 90s when that first started, and initially there was a huge rush of travel from Durban to India, and it was mainly Durban origin. The South Africans of Indian origin who having been cut off from being able to visit India for generations in some cases, just had a rush of rediscovering their roots and so forth. But the reality is they have been away from India for so long. It's not like most of them have not maintained family ties or any sort of business connections or whatever because of the legacy of the apartheid era. So while they had that initial rush for the first 3 to 4 years, at the end of that, people have made their pilgrimage, gone and seen the towns that they've come from. And now they're just happy to go off to Mauritius for a beach vacation instead of, taking that Christmas trip off to India instead. And I think that's where it's really gone. I think the other way around, from India into KZN, is interesting. I've seen these from Statistics South Africa. I can't remember if it's Statistics or was it Tourism, but one of the two. If you look at it, the main province of destination from pretty much every region of the world is Gauteng and Johannesburg, and that stands to reason. But Asia is the second largest destination province for visitors from Asia. Now, that includes not just India, but, all of Asia. They don't segregate that. But the second largest province is KZN, not Western Cape, which tends to be, either first or second when it comes to visitors from Europe, North America, and so forth. So definitely there are ties and, potential for travel there. I don't think it's strong enough for direct flights. I think, the Emirates flights via Dubai, Qatar, Turkish, there's a lot of the airlines which offer these connections to the Indian subcontinent over their hubs in the Middle East. I think KZN and Durban are probably best served through that. But definitively, once somebody finds a way to serve Johannesburg to Mumbai in particular, that is the largest market. Mumbai is 145,000 and Johannesburg Delhi is just about 45,000. So, it's 3 times the size. Johannesburg to Mumbai, if you're able to get your cost structure right, whoever can do that will make a killing. But you will be eaten alive if you can't go in and match that, 4 to 5 cents yield, which is very, very challenging to do in a market, in a long haul market like that.
So it's interesting with you talk about the XLR. The dirty little secret about the XLR, it's got horrible cargo capacity. You've taken out a lot of the capacity, put that tank in there, fuel tank. So if you're talking about the range, it's great, but there's no way you're allowing people to have 3 bags. No way. And then you also have to find revenue cargo. So that might be a problem airplane. A 330 is more like it, but again, you've got to have the right cost structure, as you say. And the issue there is if you're going to get 4 cents a mile or kilometer from passenger traffic, you're going to have to get belly cargo that'll kick that up to a whole lot more. So I would imagine that actually the secret sauce here is not a single aisle long range. It's probably a low cost wide body that can bring in the cargo. And that I think that might be an interesting approach because it's global south now, right? So
Absolutely. And I think the reality is once Indigo's got their wide bodies, this will be the kind of route that they'll be able to serve because you're not just going to be looking at the overall O&D. I mean, they've got a huge network. But what people don't realize is, while they serve over 100 destinations in India, they're serving something like 50 to 60 destinations, everywhere from Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Central Asia, code sharing to Istanbul and so forth. So making India a potential hub for servicing the Far East, because South Africa is a market that is poorly served to the Far East. I mean, you've got flights to a couple of hubs like Hong Kong, Singapore, and stuff like that. But the reality is everything else is connecting through the Middle East for the most part. Right. And the reality is there's absolutely no reason why if Indigo is able to put that kind of thing together that, serving South Africa from Mumbai with an A330, whether it starts off 3 to 4 times weekly and then goes up to daily. I mean, Indigo doesn't go into market if they can't serve it daily, within a conceivable area. But a daily A330 Johannesburg, Mumbai, with connections onward to everywhere from, Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh, Singapore, Bangkok, Dhaka, their entire network, Kathmandu, it becomes a very, very attractive proposition for them. And, Indigo is no longer just this plain low cost. They're going to have their Indigo stretch product, their so-called pseudo business class product coming in. Yes. And, that makes it a potential thing where they're even able to push for slightly higher yields than they've traditionally been able to get on markets like, their all economy service to Nairobi, for example, which has really crashed yields in that market from what I understand. So, I think Indigo's probably best suited, but I wouldn't be surprised. Air India 787 is also, the size of aircraft they can do it. I think Air India is going to struggle with their cost structure on that because Air India does not command a yield premium. And while certainly, a non-stop flight will get a better yield premium over the current 4 to 5 cents that they're currently paying per seat kilometer, Air India doesn't have costs in that range.
Right.
Their costs are way above that, and so they'll bleed very badly if they did that. Indigo's probably the best suited one to do that. And of course, someone could try to do it one stop. I mean, as you mentioned, the Air India flights out there, those flew with the Airbus 310 via Dar es Salaam. Maybe someone wants to try and link South Africa as a tag to a Mauritius or a Seychelles or a Tanzania or something like that. Don't know, but I don't think the economics would work on that either. Those it doesn't make sense. But just because it doesn't make sense doesn't mean people won't do it. The history of airlines is littered with people making bad decisions.
So another item that popped up is I see Boeing investing in a facility in Addis, obviously to get closer to the big airline in Africa. I'm intrigued by Ethiopians' prospects. How much more can they grow? Because it's been absolutely amazing if one looks at their history. And the other thing that I'm intrigued by is 350-900s. Well, I think they've ordered 4 1000s and 6 777-9s. 777-9s. I mean, is the market there? Is it just replacement, do you think?
The market. I think the 350-1000s are intended as replacements for the 777-300s. Those are aging right now, and those will come in, slide in like for like. The 777s are really long in the tooth. I've flown on a bunch of them recently, and say 1 out of 5 seatback TVs don't work. The Wi-Fi is hit or miss. It's two toilets at the back are usually closed off for whatever reason, and they need a little bit of tender loving care. I think a big thing with Ethiopian strategy and why the 350-1000 in particular is important is, they made a big commitment to the new airport in Bishoftu. which is everyone talks about being a large airport and so forth. But I think a very critical component of that new airport for Ethiopian is going to be that it is about 2,000 feet lower than the current Bole airport in Addis. And my understanding is that Airbus has given commitments to them that 350-1000 will be able to fly Addis to North America, or at least Eastern North America, nonstop for that. And I think, Boeing has not given those commitments, even for the 777-200LR, being able to do it without significant payload restrictions. Airbus has, and I think that's where the 350-1000 is going to be particularly important for Ethiopia, because that, at 5,000 odd feet above sea level, you're looking at the same altitude as Nairobi or Johannesburg pretty much, and we've seen airlines being able to achieve that to North America. So I think that's going to be really important for Ethiopian strategy. It'll open up a lot of new markets for them, because right now, with the need of having to do a tech stop, it hurts their hub banks. Just simply scheduling from those hub banks doesn't work for any markets further afield than, say, Chicago and Minneapolis. I think that's about the limit of where they can get to with one tech stop in that. When you take away that extra hour and a half that you need for that tech stop and add that to range, you're now, extending it all the way up to potentially Denver, and maybe even West Coast if they're able to streamline things a bit more. So I think that's an important thing for them. It opens up Australia. Technically they can do Perth right now nonstop, from Addis, but it would open up where the real bigger Ethiopian markets are, which is Melbourne in particular, I believe, is well, it's the largest for the O&D, but in general, Perth is equivalent to Melbourne and Sydney in terms of where Africans go. Interestingly, I was looking at those figures a little while ago when SA opened up, and Perth holds its own. For a small town, it's got quite a bit of African influence, although mainly from Southern Africa. But yeah, so I think Ethiopian definitely the newer generation aircraft with better range and better performance in high fields is something that's going to be very important to them. But beyond that, ET has grown profitably at an incredible rate for many years. And I don't see that changing. And in fact, what's interesting is the fact that while their pipeline for orders has dried up this year, their expansion has not. And their expansion has actually been happening through creative scheduling. If you look at how they've been doing it, they've been squeezing more and more utility out of existing assets. But, aircraft which have been parked, like, say, for example, Rome. They had aircraft that sit the entire day in Rome. It arrives at 5:30 in the morning and then flies back at 11 o'clock at night. What they're doing now on weekends is they're flying that aircraft starting in October, going to fly that aircraft from Rome back into Addis and then turn it around and take it back to Rome at 10 p.m. to make that 11 p.m. departure as well. So they're effectively getting an extra frequency into Europe on a weekend, where the demand is there without an additional airframe. And what they're also doing is they're putting connections. So they're putting in extra flights to, say, Zanzibar on that same weekend. So the passengers coming out of Rome will now have the connections into markets like Zanzibar, Mombasa, places where the Italian tourists go in the off season to be able to do that. So the way ET's been doing this, Chennai is another example. They've increased their frequencies to Chennai. But if you look at how they have scheduled the new frequencies, what they've actually done is where 3 weekly frequencies required almost one entire airframe to fly just 3 frequencies, and the plane sat on ground for 18 hours. Now they've got 4 frequencies, but they need only 3/4 of an airframe, because they're tightening the turnarounds, and they're improving connectivity by building up that third hub bank. So ET is doing it, being very smart about what they're doing. I believe they've got another MAX delivery coming up. It was supposed to have been yesterday, but my guys at Boeing tell me it got delayed a bit. So probably within the next week or two, they will have another MAX. There's 2 more MAXs due by the end of the year, which are already almost ready for delivery. I think that is where their key is going to be. Plus, I think that first 350-1000 is due October or November. So we'll see those coming in. The 350-1000 in particular will be interesting to see how they deploy it, whether it's going to be a straight 1-to-1 for the 777-300, which is currently, being used on the Dubais and the Guangzhous mainly, whether it's going to go onto those routes, or whether it is, maybe being used interchangeably 350-900s to North America or Europe on, peak days. So lots of interesting things, but to go back to the question you asked, I think Ethiopian will not struggle to to fill these aircraft. Ethiopian is not just an airline for Ethiopia; it's an airline for all of Africa, and Africa's aviation continues to grow, and Ethiopia's share of that pie continues to grow as well.
Well, Sean, those are the two items I have. Any items you want to throw into the mix?
I think, we've covered the big news. It's been an exciting month for African aviation, but I think the big one out there has been what Qatar is doing. I think one thing, which people who may be wondering also need to be aware is that Qatar still remains committed to their investment in Rwanda. It was announced 5 years ago, but it hasn't yet closed. But by every account, and I've spoken to some folks at Qatar about it, they're saying that it has made progress in recent times, as well as the construction, because Qatar, I don't know if it's Qatar Airways or the government of Qatar, is also investing in the new Bugesera airport in Rwanda, which, similar to the airport in Addis, could be a game changer in terms of the facilities, because right now Rwanda is also constrained in terms of what they can do at their hub, in terms of both because of altitude, size, and a few other natural constraints over there. But the new airport will basically also give Rwanda the ability to hit three-quarters of the world nonstop from there if they were to choose to do so. So I think that infrastructure is important, and I think Qatar's financing is going to be the only way that project comes to fruition anytime soon. So I think we'll probably see a bit more from Qatar in terms of announcements with regards to Rwanda and the airport in Bugesera by the end of this year. I think this, announcing this Airlink thing may give that a little bit more momentum to close the deal, because I'm sure it's been hung up due to some sort of politics. Because, like everything in Rwanda, politics drives well the momentum of things.
Sean, great to have a conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Always fun.